Welcome very much to our debate about Eastern European Strategic Infrastructure Initiative. Actually, for whole of Europe, we need more infrastructure. Now, at the Corona crisis, we have done this historic recovery fund and also put much more money into the European economy. And it's essential to use this money wisely and to build the infrastructure we always had to build, but we postponed. We always had the excuse we have no funding together. We are not good enough to pool European-wide funding for big infrastructure projects. And it's really time to get this done now. And it's really time also to call it after this personality, Mrs. Palacio. She was already the Commissioner for Transport. She unfortunately passed away early, but she was a very, very good personality of European understanding and vision. And she said during her term as Commissioner for Transport, after the Balkan Wars, so she was in 1999 to 2004, at this very important time before the European enlargement, the big enlargement round of 2004, and also after the Balkan Wars from 1999 to 2000, she was in charge for European transport policy, and she was very active to assess the approximate volume of infrastructure requirements for the Balkans and for Eastern Europe. At that time, still, I think, not Ukraine, but alone for the Balkan and for Romania and for, let's say, the Eastern and Western Balkans together, she has estimated in a study that it takes about €500 billion to bring the whole system, railway, ports, airports, and highways to a normal European level. That was €500 billion in the beginning of the 2000s. And I think what we need now to honor her and her achievement, because at that time we really didn't do that, and everybody was saying, we don't have the money, we cannot do it, let's do it in some generations, when actually for the Eastern Germans it was done. The Eastern Germans have now, in 2020, almost Western infrastructure. But of course there they joined Germany, and this was a different level of redistribution, the possibilities. But this was not possible for the Polish, but they have really come up also as well, because they're a big country. But for the more fragile countries, like the smaller economies with less taxpayers bases, from Montenegro, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, and now we have also the task additionally of Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia. Who can pay for that? The answer is very simple: the European Union. And yes, it makes a lot of sense, because this is pan-European infrastructure. This is transport corridors to Asia, to Turkey, to the Caucasus, to Central Asia, and also to Africa, obviously. And that's very important. So we should be very, very smart here. Use this opportunity of the sufficient funding, not to prop up some welfare systems and failed health systems. That really very much can be with advice, with technical assistance, but not with European subsidies. Yeah, that's really wrong. For the Spanish, for the Italians, we need to build infrastructure as well. And that's really the way to use this money wisely for long-term benefit of the European economy, and to really to bridge this productivity and infrastructure gap which we have at the European periphery. And that, I think, it's important to launch a pan-European infrastructure initiative, a kind of EFS2. That's the fund of the EIB, which Juncker created after the beginning of his mandate, after the financial crisis in 2014. And we need a second version of this, an update, but focused on the Eastern European infrastructure, obviously. But not only. We also have a lot to do in the southern and member states of Europe, and we have other big projects as well, which I will discuss. But let's honor this important European personality, name this fund after her, and build whatever she has already seen in her period 15 years ago, in her period of power. And she was a visionary, she was very smart, and we should have done more courageous investments already back then, okay, but now we have decades to come, a lot to do. What needs to be done? Pan-European Transport and Infrastructure Union That is what we have to build, and strategically start from the big level. We have to connect Europe with Africa and China, bypassing Russia. So basically, when you look at the geography of Europe, especially on Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, already, Northern Central Europe is quite rich and has very much infrastructure. And it's difficult to build more because there's a lot of civil protest against it. But we have strategic problems. We have strategic problems to connect with African continent, and we have problems basically with Russia and with Iran. Yeah? It's hostile states. And we have this prosperity center of East Asia with which we are very badly connected. And now the Chinese have to build everything because we lack vision and funding. And that's not the optimum result. So what we need to do? First of all, we need a bridge or a tunnel. I'm technology-wise open for the best solution and for the cost-effective solution, but you need to link in Gibraltar with Morocco. That's very important. You need to link Italy with Tunisia, and you need to link Azerbaijan with Kazakhstan on the other side of the Caspian Sea. That's the three most important links we need. And also we need a link from the eastern Turkey towards Iraq, bypassing Syria to Egypt, basically, because we have to bypass Syria, Iran, and hostile Russia. And these are the main strategic links towards East Asia and to Africa and the world. And this is what we need to do. Additionally, we have the task of developing the Ukrainian highway and railway project in order to support the Ukrainians reach the Eastern Front with Russia better. The Romanian highway project linking the Balkans and building all these infrastructure corridors in the Balkans which are missing. Build a tunnel between Montenegro and Kosovo, because also in Serbia we cannot rely very much, and we have to discuss how to help to reach Kosovo without passing Serbia. And the one corridor between the southern Black Sea corridor from Bulgaria, Turkey towards this Caspian bridge. That's also very important. These are, I think, the main priority. Later, I will also discuss we have to also build a tunnel between under the Adriatic, because Albania must be linked, similar where there is now this gas pipeline, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline. We also need an underwater tunnel towards Italy. I think, and then let me not forget that I'm really already in big projects. We need this Estonian-Finland tunnel as well. That's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mega projects, and we don't need, the Alps are already a lot of tunnels. Let's a little bit focus on the periphery tunnels, I think so. Because we do the Brenner, and the Swiss have done a number of things. Reschedule all these things and make sure that we connect with Africa, Asia, and do the big projects of strategic significance on the periphery before. Here the list again, what we really want to do, EU-African partnership, then we have to fill it up with infrastructure. Connect with India, where's the infrastructure to connect? Yeah, we have now the free trade agreement with Japan. We have the South Korea. We want to do ASEAN and Indonesia. And also we have now, we're in the process of agreeing about the investment protection agreement with China. Very good. Where's the infrastructure? We have this confrontation with hostile Russia, hostile Iran, hostile Syria. So we have to bypass them. How to do that? It's pretty clear. These are the big projects which we have to do in that strategic area, and we have to do that fast. So I want to say that we are totally capable of doing that. Yeah, we are capable of doing that. Certainly we have to focus on Eastern Europe, but also we have to do the Western European infrastructure. One great example of modern infrastructure is this Fehmarn Belt connecting northern Germany with Denmark. Very good. Yeah. In China, they have they have bridges of 150 kilometer railway bridges already. I mean, this is amazing. Yeah, this is really good. Yeah, But we have a lot of reluctance against modern infrastructure in rich Western Europe. Okay, always legal challenges, delays, complications. Let's build first the infrastructure which we need to connect Eastern Europe with our strategic regions where we want to have a big economic cooperation in the coming century. And that economic cooperation requires obviously decent infrastructure. And let's develop Eastern Europe. That's my topic because we need also to link this infrastructure with the strategic security situation in the countries. I say it now since years. We need a big major investment package of the EU and the EIB for Bosnia, which then leads towards peace in Bosnia. Basically, we buy the Bosnian Serb elite into compliance with big infrastructure project, and it will work, don't worry. It's very good. My proposal is to build a EIB highway operation company, a European state-owned company on the European level in charge of infrastructure, and that specific countries also to buy, for example, 49% of both state highway operators and really focus to do these highways which they are needed, several highways. I have designed exactly 7 to Split, to Zagreb, to Belgrade, the Peace Highway to Pristina, the Adriatic Highway, and also the big Corridor 5 inside Bosnia, and all of them to build them really at once and make a big infrastructure package of around 5 billion for Bosnia alone in this decade, and make sure that we have real progress here, but condition it with a consent by the Bosnian Serbs towards NATO membership, which is so beneficial for the country. And also to include obviously Ukraine and Turkey and think strategic, also the Southern Caucasus. That makes us very credible towards the partner in the Eastern Partnership and Turkey. And we anyhow need a very important tool to support Turkey, but also buy Turkey out of the EU candidate status, which it unfortunately has, and it's creating a lot of political problems, and it's very unrealistic for this century. But obviously we need Turkey and Turkey needs us. We are so connected. We are allies in NATO. We need also to make a big pillar of infrastructure together, a big package of infrastructure together. And for that we need to connect via Romania, Bulgaria. We need also to reach the Southern Caucasus. It's really very important. Yeah? I have already called it the CEFTA highway, from Durrës or Bar in Montenegro and towards the east until Mariupol, the frontline city with Russia, the freedom city, the hero city of free Ukraine at the Black Sea. And this must be going directly along the Black Sea, then upwards, northwards, and then towards Kherson and Mariupol. I talked about the tunnel already. Very important strategically to have a winter-safe connection with modern infrastructure to Kosovo and KFOR and bypassing the Serbian territory, because we still cannot fully rely on Serbian intentions until they are not in NATO. And nevertheless, it's anyhow a good idea, and it's a good investment to have make sure that Kosovo can reach the strategic NATO harbor of Bar in Montenegro very well. It's much cheaper to build this tunnel than to build a new harbor in Albania, which is not so much needed at the moment. Yeah? So I also call for a real Balkan Peace Highway. That's not the niche Merdare corridor, which is anyhow necessary, but still a lot of Kosovo people will not feel safe driving through Serbia, and it's also very crowded. So we need a central Balkan corridor that goes basically from Skopje to Pristina already ready, to Mitrovica soon ready, and then north to Novi Pazar, and reaching then into Uzice with the link with the new highway planned via Gorazde and Sarajevo towards Central Europe. This is the real Balkan Peace Highway connecting the two victims, the main victims of Serb aggressions of the 90s, that is Bosnia and Serbia, and also helping the poor underdeveloped Muslim region of Sanjak in Serbia. So let's come to the less great successes of the last 7 years, because where is the Adriatic Highway? We had this promised in 2014 Berlin process, and it's not there. The Montenegrinians preferred to build the highway to the north, and then the Croatians and the Bosnians never agreed on the routing. and the Albania anyhow has not really built any single kilometer in the last 7 years under Rama. So we are in a bit of a mess. And we are in a deep mess when we look, I call it the Southern Balkan disconnectivity agenda, because it's a disconnected Southern Balkan. Still, 7 years into the Berlin process, which has promised so much progress, we have more or less the same connection, Montenegro, Croatia, in Herzegovina and in Nikšić up there. It has a little bit improved with a new asphalt, but it's minimal. We have the connection in the south of Montenegro, a little bit improved on a normal country road. You know, it's no longer a complete disaster, but part of it from Bar to the border, to half of the way to Kutia, is still a complete disaster, like a donkey carriage. Yeah? Then we have in Kosovo, okay, they have the highway to Albania now, and it's gradually getting ready, half of it, yeah. But there is still so much missing from Milot up to the start of the highway, certainly 50 kilometers. And then in Kosovo was great progress on the highways, you know, but it's really good, and they are really building. Now, Kosovo, I don't want to criticize because they made really major progress. Albania has been, since Berisha left, done nothing. And Macedonia has only talked, but when you see the reality of the highway construction, really minimal. Minimal. Yeah, I always they have now finally closed the corridor 10 to Greece, but that we should have done maybe 50 years ago. And then when you look at the situation of Greece and Bulgaria, it's also very problematic how little the Bulgarians have done for the connectivity with Macedonia. And the Greeks have done almost nothing. Only the one of 3 routes or 4 routes, which there should be from Thessaloniki and from Florina and from up to Gorcha, and then from the Yanina, they have basically done only 1 to Gorcha. That's 25%. So all in all, it's, to be honest, very disappointing. I've here made the detailed slide about Albania-Macedonia connectivity and Bulgaria-Macedonia connectivity, Greece connectivity with Albania and Macedonia. And please tell me that anybody can be happy with this. If something has happened, because I've not been driving a lot in the south of Albania in the recent years when I was in Ukraine, but when anybody can be happy about this, please explain me why. And I don't see it. Macedonia and Bulgaria now, Bulgaria wants to block North Macedonia. This is all a big disaster, to be honest. And when we talk how long we already in the Berlin process, interconnectivity agenda, really it's quite bad. Let's change a little bit further to the east. I call still, when I don't see the progress so much, I still call for including the Southern Balkans into infrastructure interconnectivity initiative, like Berlin, or actually include them in Berlin. The process, the mechanisms are there. It's just lacking the money, and that hopefully we have solved now with this big new recovery package. But we need the same mechanism. We need peace via interconnectivity, mutual regional improvement of economic interconnectivity as a start to avoid further escalation of the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict and also the Turkish-Armenian conflict. So this is really a very important Southern Caucasus, Benelux, starting with infrastructure. And also never forget, think big, we have to be courageous. I understand it might be taking 40 years to fund and build it, but when we are now in 2020, then we are 2060 and we will be ready if we start now. But we can start now. And even in Africa, they have a long-term plan for high-speed railways. They have called it the 2067 project. Yeah, look, okay, maybe we call it also 2067, but let's start now. Let's do the planning. Let's have the technology and the funding, and then let's build it for some years, maybe together with China. And then we suddenly are connecting Central Asia within the European Union by a land corridor. That's European Turkey Infrastructure Initiative, Southern Black Sea Interconnectivity. How important is this? This is very important. This is our NATO ally. We have for refugee issues and for strategic security in Syria, for economic issues, for keeping them away from Putin, so many reasons to have a very strong partnership with Turkey. And one important pillar, obviously, the currency link, the PEC with the lira, but the other one is infrastructure, obviously, and defense sector. These are all very important things to do that and to move ahead, and so that's very important. I call it, there are many ways to discuss it. I call it European Black Sea Security and Infrastructure Initiative, and really to make sure that this vital European sea, the European Black Sea, it's not a Russian lake, it's a European sea, and this sea is really interconnected all around the Black Sea very well from the SEFTA highway from Mariupol, you see it here, Mariupol, to connect also Kherson, the northern twin of the South Korea of Ukraine in the future, and this whole to make it a very strong development here, connect, and then later to build the link. There is already a ferry port in Baku, but also then to link it really with a tunnel towards Central Asia. The same is true also to adopt our Danube strategy, to Danube-Dniester-Dnipro strategy, and to build a big E40 water ring. With Belarus we have obviously an issue now, but we can also see what that is happening. But nevertheless, hopefully there will be free Belarus and there will be European Belarus. But nevertheless, to build the Dnipro very strong, to build the Dniester as a water ring, and to really go and be very successful and use the whole mechanisms of the Danube strategy for Ukraine, which has now joined, and also to provide the sufficient funding. In our relation with China, let's be also very important that China had this initiative is very good, but it must be on a new level, restructured. It's not China picking and winning and choosing partners, but we as EU and China must be ready to involve also other partners in the discussions, like for example Japan and Turkey and South Korea. That should be very, very important partners in that, because East Asia is not just China, it's obviously also South Korea and Japan. And also it's not only the EU but also Turkey in the West on the recipient. And then also the 18 countries in between is basically not separate EU countries, because they are represented by the European Union, but it's the 6 Balkan countries, the 6 ERB countries, and the 6 Central Asian countries. And then we go ahead in this format, and then we really connect East Asia and the European Union in a reasonable way together and take a lot of responsibility financially and technically for what we want to do, and make sure the Chinese and the European formats fit together, and it's really working. Where is Ukraine and Kosovo united? By 3 highways. That's of course also very important, that together with infrastructure must be payment for infrastructure. It's not possible to make huge multi-billion projects in railway and in infrastructure like top level like highways, and then Ukraine and Kosovo have no payment and no tolling system, and that must be Europeanized. I call for a united European highway tolling system, one payment system for all European highways, and that's really very important also for all future European member states, and to help them from the start to build a good highway system. The Ukrainians do now tremendous things, that's really very important, 3 billion euro, we should support them more. They should also not refer to it as the Eisenhower Interstate Project, but as the Chernobyl Ukrainian Highway Project. We have this very famous personality, one of the key leaders of the Free Ukraine in the 90s, the leader of the RUK, and we have Ibrahim Horogova Highway. Why not to have the Chernobyl Ukrainian Highway Project to honor this gentleman? He actually died in a car accident, and it's very important never to forget him, how important also road safety is, because Ukraine is the most effective and most tragic balance sheet. Ukraine has a terrible road safety balance. Coming back to the Balkans, the Central Adriatic Highway, I already said, we had really so much progress in talks, but we have not in the reality. On this Adriatic Highway, we still have 330 kilometers on the northern sections to be built, and that's from northern Albania to the end of the highway in Croatia. To my best knowledge, there's nothing built between there, and that's really very annoying. The Croatians built the bridge now to bypass that's only a bypass of a section which actually already exists in Bosnia. So, because the Bosnians have built it in Medjugorje. So, in terms of real better connectivity between, in kilometer-wise, from the end of the highway in Bosnia and Croatia on the same level and towards Milot in northern Albania, where the Kosovo highway lives, nothing has been achieved. And it's 330 kilometers that are missing. And only in all, if you add then the southern part, it's another 140 kilometers which are missing from Fier in southern Albania or central Albania to Kakavia. And then you have nothing, and you miss also the link, the 50 kilometers in Greece. So when you add it up, it's good and no less. 200 kilometers from the southern part, 530 kilometers around, which are missing from the Greek city of Ioannina towards Medjugorje in Bosnia. And this is what is missing today after 7 years. I want to remind everybody that Putin built this Kerch bridge, this illegal Kerch bridge, in just 6 years. Yeah, it was also very important for him. It is illegal. I'm against it, but he did it. Yeah? And we have not built anything of 520 kilometers on the so-called priority project, the Adriatic Highway. We should have a European Day to celebrate the European Transport Union on the 12th of July, the day when the transport treaty was signed for the Balkans, and really think about that we have not really done enough in the last 20 years, and we really should use the money now very wisely to do whatever we can to have 20 very intensive years of railway and highway and energy interconnectivity. Now here, for example, in Kosovo, great progress. That's the highway to the border to Macedonia, North Macedonia. Sadly, the North Macedonians have not built. So let me also come to the famous topic of the bridges on the Danube. We need 7 more bridges on the Danube because we are really very much behind on that one. Somehow we have built the one or the other, but we are really, even the Romans have understood the necessity. There's this famous Trajan bridge connecting Serbia and Romania, but we have not really made a lot of progress, neither in Romania, Bulgaria in the southern section, nor in Hungary, nor in Austria. It's all a little bit annoying and it's really not good. Even Linz, my hometown, is having a big struggle with Danube bridges, and somehow we somehow lose the future and the interconnectivity. And this Danube is so important for us, and it's such an obvious obstacle. And we need to really get going here. And this is very much for Dr. Busek. He's a great leader who always pushed for it. But somehow we miss the political leadership in Brussels and in the region to get all these things done. And it's really very annoying. Now, of course, there is a big hope in the US FTC. They are now based in Belgrade. I was against the Belgrade position, but it's good that they are there at least. This is a big American institution for development finance. Maybe they will do very good things, I hope so. When it comes to the deep sea port, which is agreed in the Serbia-Kosovo agreement, I don't know if there is really such a possibility geography-wise in Albania to build that port, because it's very sandy and problematic, but it's good that they want to do it, because one big port in the Southern Balkans would be very good. I obviously will recommend Bar. To be honest, I will put that Bar immediately after that slide here. And then it's very good because NATO port of Bar, it's the best facility for deep sea, and it was designed as such already in 1905, and it was opened 23rd of March, and then it was redesigned also during various times in the 20th century, and it is the one big opportunity in the Southern Balkans, to my best knowledge, where such a deep sea port can be done and should be done. Then obviously there was the idea of the railway, Belgrade-Pristina. I think honestly all these things are really good, but the fiscal space is not there to build them in 100 years. So what we need is a European railway holding for the Balkans, and all this infrastructure must be built and funded by the European railway company and not by the countries. It's totally impossible otherwise. This I already said, that I welcome very much this normalization agreement, hopefully soon peace agreement, and this opening of DFC in Belgrade. I called to put it in Tirana or in Skopje in a NATO capital, but nevertheless, it's good, it's there, and it makes a lot of sense. There was a little bit of a misunderstanding where the peace highways are now funded, and I was intervening a little bit in this debate because real peace highway, you know already, is from Sarajevo to Pristina, and already 2 years ago the EU has started with all the funding. It's now here, the peace funding for the Balkan Highway. There's a lot to do, and now basically they have already funded it from the EU. Now the Americans have said they will fund it. Anyhow, whoever does it doesn't matter. We should work together, all European and American taxpayers, to take co-responsibility for interconnectivity and strategic connectivity in the Balkans. That's very important. And not to start petty fights about turfs, but to make sure that also nobody can play us off a bit. We have at least the highway to Serbia, the highway from Serbia, and to connect with 4 of the victims of Serbian aggression. It's with Montenegro, with Bosnia, and also with Kosovo, obviously, 4 opportunities for peace highways. So please make sure that this is well coordinated and not for entertainment, but really a success. 9th of July, the EU Day to commemorate the freeze of Balkan process. Since 2008 in London, there was a big freeze here, yeah? And that's really very bad, We had a little bit of small progress before, a major progress in the Prespa, and then was this London summit, and since the 2 years in Austria, but also in the whole thing is really stuck, yeah? And this is really something we have to reconsider now with a new commission, already 1 year in the working. Okay, you need some time to get organized, but now it's time for a big push for the European Balkans in infrastructure, in accession, in membership. You know very well, we need to have the 3 NATO members into the EU in 2022 and to adopt the euro. You saw maybe that video, but also to build the necessary infrastructure. And just let me conclude, what we also need to do is to unite our railway systems in Europe in order to be able to do also a big dimension of railways. We need a European company, a very strong one, a unity of the French and German, and also the others can join and bring in their assets in correlation with the asset value to reduce the debt level of the member states or to give them shares in the joint company as they wish. But nevertheless, we need a pan-European energy, but in that case, a railway company which is able to stem all these investments, obviously backed by the EIB, but really to make sure that the infrastructure, interconnectivity with Africa, with Asia, in the Balkans, in Ukraine, all these big projects which there are, and maybe more, the whole continent, especially in the South and in Eastern Europe, must be booming and hammering, and the dynamics of the interconnectivity must be for the next 2-3 decades, maybe 4 decades. There must be amazing progress in European infrastructure interconnectivity eastwards, and that's a powerful vision, and we can make that reality if we are more united, if we use the money now wisely and make sure that the projects are really not left in the small fragile economies of the region, but Europeanized, and together we can achieve a lot of things. And remember the wisdom of Mrs. Palacio, and now it's time to live up to her vision, and we have these next 2 decades, maybe it's 4 decades, until everything is finished, but let's make sure that we use this money and this time very wisely, and in the next decades really to connect Europe and the European periphery, south and east, very much and very well with the other parts of the world, and connect and bring European level infrastructure in this region. Thanks a lot.